Hello, I'm Jim Nemitz, 7th President of the West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine. WVSOM was founded on December 12, 1972, with the mission to produce quality, caring, highly competent osteopathic physicians who would go on to serve rural West Virginia and beyond. 50 years later, we continue to fulfill this mission. This is our story, told by those who have lived it.
When I was in Kirksville, Missouri, there was only 6 or 7 osteopathic colleges then at that time. That's before cell phones and so forth. My dad would call me every Saturday. One time he called and I said, "How are things back home?" He said, "The 4 of us are going to buy the old military school and turn it into an osteopathic college." And I said, "What in the world would you do that for?" And he said, there's only a few of us DOs left in West Virginia. He said, "I'm just afraid that when we're gone, there will be no more DOs in West Virginia." And he said, "What we want to do is to get a college, graduate some West Virginia natives, and hopefully perpetuate the profession in West Virginia." It's really a source of pride in my family that he was thinking about that.
They had a vision for improving health care in West Virginia and meeting the desperate need that we had for doctors, as well as their desire to grow the osteopathic profession.
I heard about WVSOM, that they were looking to take their first class. That was back early in 1974, I think.
There was Dr. Wallington, Dr. Bells, Dr. Newell, and Dr. Apgar. But Dr. Wallington was the one I met first. We introduced ourselves, said that, we were very interested in the school. So after he talked for a little while, he said, "I like both of you boys." He says, "I want you in my first class."
It was basically the first medical school that said yes, and I went.
Apparently the first class that got here, when they interviewed, the president gave his welcome speech and he said, "I'm not sure if we're going to be here by the end of the year, but we're going to make a go of it." So can you imagine starting medical school and having the president of the school tell you that they're not sure they're going to make it to the end of the year?
I mean, we were winging it, okay? We put together our own stools for the histology lab. So Dr. Sharp took us in there and there were all these cardboard boxes with stools in them, and we tore into them and put them together with Elmer's glue. And then we each had a stool to look in our microscope.
It was quite an adventure. There wasn't a whole lot of money, and for only 36 students, it was kind of hard, to make ends meet.
One might say that the facilities at that point were rather primitive.
I remember not having any heat and sitting there with your winter coat and gloves on trying to take notes because we didn't have computers then.
There was an old restaurant downtown. A lot of us would eat lunch down there. It's kind of like an all-you-could-eat.
She had the best food. And I do think she kept a lot of the first couple of years students alive. I really do.
Short little lady, cute as could be. She was just a wonderful person. She fed students and other people that came in for lunch for $3. Students could go down there and fill their plate up as much as they want and take some of it home, and that was their lunch and dinner. Especially in the hard time when scholarships or money might be a little bit tight.
The first 2 years the school was private and things were pretty tight. So the association with the state really has helped the school a lot.
When we started, we were still a private medical school. We were in the process of hoping we would become a state-supported medical school, but it was still kind of up in the air.
Faculty would meet with us and say, "We have a contingency plan if this school closes. Yeah, we can send you to Kirksville, Missouri, or Kansas City, or wherever, which was a little bit disturbing, to say the least.
At that time I told my dad, I said, Dad, it looks like I might have to go to Texas. That's a possibility to finish up. And he says, Texas? And I said, yeah. I said, the school can't make it, finances are bad.
Arch Moore was governor when we got started. He actually was the one that he wanted the school in this place because he had some good friends that were pushing him, that were basically legislators from down in this area.
At that time, you know, my dad was always very good friends from the very beginning of Arch Moore's career, even as a congressman.
The Board of Regents refused to pass the funding to this institution that had been originally designated for it in the governor's budget.
I guess he talked to the governor at that time, Governor Moore, and said, hey, my boy's gonna have to go to Texas. He says, I don't like that. And I'm sure the governor tried to help Dr. Wallington and Dr. Abkar and Dr. Newell. I'm sure they all knew him, and Dr. Bells. Everybody was working hard, you know, to try to get the state to take us in. And so I remember my dad saying that, son, I had a call from the governor. He said he was going to do the state of the state, and to watch it, he thinks that we'll be happy. And he did the state of the state and put us into the state system, and we were secure. And so that was a relief, and the rest is history.
When I arrived, I think there was 2 biochemists, an anatomist, 2 microbiologists, 1 physiologist, and 1 secretary.
So I was the secretary to the president, so I worked for the first 6 presidents of the school. Dr. Sharp was my family's family doctor growing up. And actually, he even pierced my ears, even though he didn't think I needed them done, and he told me that.
Dear Dr. Sharp, we want you to know that we fondly think of you often. Your leadership and steady hand at the helm provided the needed guidance for a medical school that some thought only an unrealistic dream.
WVSOM in the early days was an institution that looked like easy prey for politicians who wanted to take advantage of the school and perhaps close it. And so it happened under the Rockefeller administration in the early 80s.
So we'd have Rockefeller as the governor, and so everybody's listening to the State of the State speech, and he started out and went through some things, and then he said, one of my goals for the year is to shut down the West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine. And everybody just was like, what did he just say?
You know, we heard lots of times about closure, merger, lack of funding or no funding.
The legislature had tried to close the school at least once or twice before, and in 1989, they tried again.
I mean, the state was having some financial problems. Felt 3 medical schools they could probably do with 2.
A lot of my work in the early going was to try and get the word out about the school and what it did, and to help to organize the alumni base to basically reach out to their legislators to stop it in its tracks.
They were asking us to write letters to the governor, and it was just a transition. It was always this worry that we were going to close or have to merge with Marshall or WVU, and it was when Caperton was governor, and I said, what does he know?
We were the last time they tried to close WVSOM. There were a lot of bad things being said by the presidents of the medical schools and other places, but not Lewisburg. Dr. Jones did not get into that. Governor Caperton censured them all. 2 things happened. One was they called and said everything, because I was the SGA president, everything that came from the school had to come through me. And number 2, by the way, you didn't hear this, but we're meeting tonight at 10 o'clock at Dr. Jones' house. Park on the street and walk through the back door, and we had clandestine meetings to help plan what we were going to do to save the school. Dr. Jones was there, and Dr. Stuckey was there, and the deans were there. I was the only student here because supposedly everything was supposed to come through me, but I believe it was John Manchester at that time. He said, you have to answer everything for the school until the governor rescinds those orders. And he said, you have to be at Carnegie Hall tonight for this rally. Don't worry, you don't have to say anything, just sit on stage. I'm sitting on the stage with state representatives, the then mayor and other people. And the mayor gets up and he goes, now we're going to have a few words from the Student Government Association president. And he called me to the microphone and I was like, oh, I don't know. I just sat and looked and I said, you know, this is the best medical school in the world. I said, and we're not going to let it close. I said, I want my son and daughter, if they want to come here, to have that opportunity. And I said, in 4 years from now, this school will be here, but I said, Gaston Caperton will not be in the governor's office. And the whole place cheered and they stood up. And so I tell people that, yes, I had a standing ovation at Carnegie Hall.
It was always the people of the state of West Virginia, especially the rural part of the state, who went to the legislature and said, you can't do that to us. These are the only people who are providing medical care in our area.
Patients were a big part of the support at that time throughout the state.
A lot of people out in different communities throughout the state reacted to that and said, no, my doctor is from there.
And there was a competitive grant nationally by the Kellogg Foundation. All of the healthcare professions within the state of West Virginia kind of joined together in this application. There was only one entity in that collective body of wisdom that knew how to do community-based education, because that's what we had been doing from the beginning. And so from that point on, it seemed like we became the good guys instead of the ones everybody was trying to get rid of. I think if we go back to the beginning, because we needed each other to survive, we became friends with each other.
We went through many different presidents, but the deans, everybody seemed to be on the same page.
They weren't climbing a ladder. There was no competition for academic recognition where you could get ahead by putting somebody else down or something like that. It was just all cooperative, and so that's a very nice aspect likewise.
It was great. It was a family atmosphere. The instructors were outstanding, and they dedicated themselves to teaching us like I have never seen anywhere.
They were committed to your education, but they also knew you and your family. They got to know you.
I think the biggest memory for our class was probably the pig roasts with Dr. Chambers and going out to the farm.
Being in a farm in Greenbrier County with the professors and looking at the stars, just feeling connected and like it was a family environment, not so intimidating.
They were your friends, the professors. Everybody worked there, you knew everybody.
It was December of 2009. My mom kept calling like, hey, it's snowing, I need you to get out. I got stuck. And so I spent the weekend with Jennifer and Danny Seams and their little boy all weekend. They've danced at my wedding, so.
The faculty, all of the affiliated folks that had worked at the school were very welcoming, very supportive.
I feel like I was very well trained. Being a physician, you were a doctor for the entire person. Just because you might be a neurosurgeon, you were still expected to know how to respond if your neighbor's child had strep throat, or they wanted you to be a all-around encompassing physician.
The integrated osteopathic approach to medicine is, it gives you just a really full toolbox.
Being the person that WVSOM makes you, it's more than just being a doctor.
We appeal to a kind of student who is interested in not just being a doctor and making money. We appeal to people who want to serve.
We're turning out not only doctors, but good citizens.
So we've had coal miners and just about any background that you could mention that have been accepted here.
I'm exceptionally proud of the fact that we put back so many people and physicians back into the state and we retain them.
We have filled a gap in the healthcare system in West Virginia and surrounding states.
They're focused on the community, focused on taking care of Appalachia.
I think if they stay on focus and stay on that mission and listen to the needs of what the people of West Virginia really need, we're going to continue to do great things, I have no doubt.
What I see for the next 50 years is that we continue to fulfill our mission.
I don't think I have a vision of what can change other than we will continue to be what we are.
They're going to keep pushing the edges,
because that's the way they've been. They pushed the edge in 1972.
My grandfather and the other founders started this school when I think there was less than 80 DOs in the state, and now there's over 1,000. And if he were alive today, I'm sure he would be blown away by a campus tour and seeing the number of students graduating and the accomplishments that the school's had.
I happened to have the honor of sitting beside Dr. O.J. Bales, the last surviving founder of the school, who was an absolutely brilliant man with a passion for teaching osteopathy. And as he and I were looking out of the window at the alumni tower going up, at the bones of what was going to be the alumni tower, I looked at him and I said, Dr. Bales, when you gentlemen started this school, did you ever have any idea how big it was going to be? And he looked at me like I'd crawled out from under a rock. And he said, Mark, we thought we were throwing our money down a rat hole. And that took me aback for just a second. And then I said, no, wait. I said, Dr. Bales, as one of the rats that crawled out of that hole, thank you very much.
I know that things will need to change as the world changes around WVSOM, but I hope that the emphasis on teaching stays the same, that the emphasis on family stays the same. I would hate it to turn into just a regular medical school. There's plenty of those. But what we have had here, I'd say, is unique. WVSOM is a special place. I'm glad I found it.
WVSOM was an answer to prayer by a lot of people who had healthcare needs and so desperately wanted a doctor in their community, in their rural areas. And so Psalm 9:18 always came to mind. For the needy shall not always be forgotten, and the hope of the poor shall not perish forever. And so I think that WVSOM has been an answer to prayer and has really and truly changed the landscape of healthcare in West Virginia forever.